Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, it's Monday. On Mondays, we do tier lists, and on Wednesdays, we wear pink.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
And I want my pink shirt back! I want my pink shirt back!
This tier list is based on the recent release of Leafeon as well as the recent balance patch. There have been a lot of things changed, so I'm going to give my best assessment on where things are inside the game right now. As always, if a Pokemon's low on my tier list, it doesn't mean you can't crush with it. If a Pokemon's high on my tier list, it doesn't mean you need to play it. Oftentimes, these are just a relative assessment of how well these Pokemon do compared to others inside the game. I factor in things like win rate, I factor in things like my personal preference, what's happening in some competitive play, and generally what you see inside the metagame right now. So with Leafeon being the most recent release, we're going to go ahead and do that last. Let's take a look at our tiers here. We have our God tier. We're only going to have one Pokemon in our God tier. We're not friggin' Norse around here. We've got our S tier. These Pokemon are truly overpowered inside the game in one way or another. We have our A+++++ tier. These Pokemon are incredibly good, verging into the S tier, but maybe there are some things just keeping them slightly out of it. We have our A tier. We have our B+ tier. Got the B+ tier. We have our B tier. Still got the B tier, yuck. We have our C tier, and then we have our D tier. So the A tier, B+, B, C, and then D, they're just varying degrees of where I think these Pokemon land inside the game. Again, if something's in the D tier, I probably have a good reason for it, but at the same time, you could still win games with any Pokemon inside of Pokemon Unite. I would rather have a great D tier Pokemon on my team than a terrible S tier Pokemon on my team. The Pokemon on my team that is terrible is the player, not the Pokemon. Hate the player, not the game. Is that right? Let's start off with defenders. I think that'd be a fun place to start, as the last Pokemon to release inside the game was a defender, and a lot of them are really good inside of Pokemon Unite right now. Let's throw up Slowbro. Slowbro, I don't think is going anywhere from its S tier position anytime soon unless they nerf this Pokemon. One of the best Unite moves. The survivability is insane. The stuns, the CC, I mean, it's just incredible. Slowbro's incredible. Evolves at 4. Mwah! What a Pokemon. One of the best defenders inside the game. Trevenant. I think Trevenant has moved down to the A+ tier for me. Maybe even A tier at times, but it's hard to say that Trevenant isn't extremely valuable inside of games. I think the nerfs that they gave it kind of moved it out of the unbelievably broken section of Pokemon Unite, but Trevenant is still amazing. Now, here's an interesting one. I think, given what's going on with Umbreon and what has happened to Lapras, I'm going to also put Lapras in our A+ tier. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think Lapras is great. In fact, if I had to rank these against each other, which I don't have to do anything around here. You can't make me. I would put Lapras above Trevenant, but I don't think it is as broken as Slowbro or Umbreon, who is also in our S tier. I think Umbreon is, a few of the defenders all feel like they do very similar things. Obviously, it is their role. They do very similar things, and the things that they do similar, I'm trying to rank them against each other. The survivability of Umbreon's insane. The ability to stun with Umbreon is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Hold on. Can't believe this S tier is now going to be named the Unbelievable tier. Now I can't even spell unbelievable. Unbelievable? There's no way that's spelled right. The S tier, the Unbelievable tier. I just think the things that Umbreon does is pretty crazy right now, and I do think it outshines Lapras to a decent degree. Just, if you're looking at it, you'd rather have a Slowbro than a Trevenant. You'd rather have an Umbreon than a Lapras. You'd probably rather have both Slowbro or Umbreon over the other two, all three of them being very, very good. Okay, moving on to our next defender, Greedent. I'm going to put Greedent A. It's either A or B+. Here's the thing with Greedent. It's not a stereotypical defender. In fact, if they added a sixth type, a sixth class of Pokemon in Pokemon Unite, Pokemon like Greedent would be in there. They're sort of these weird harasser type Pokemon. They are unique. They are not what you expect in a defender. However, at their job, they are very good. Another Pokemon like this is Sableye. It doesn't feel like a support in any sense. It's a whole different thing. And at that job, it's very good. Greedent's the same thing. It's not a bad Pokemon. You have to be very good with it, and you just have to understand your role. However, if it's the only defender on your team, I think you're going to be disappointed here. Okay, who's next? Let's do Blastoise. I think Blastoise is probably A. Blastoise is a really good Pokemon. Both of its builds are pretty solid for different reasons. I do think it's outshined by other defenders inside the game, specifically Lapras. I feel like Lapras and Blastoise are pretty similar when you're kind of comparing the damage dealing builds the two have, and I just think the sustainability of Lapras makes it a little bit better, and the fact that it doesn't need to evolve at all. Pokemon that need to evolve are not bad. They just always have less value, especially the more evolutions they have to get. And I think Blastoise runs into that issue as well. I'm going to put Mamoswine in our B+ tier. It's really good, but here's the thing. I'm ranking these Pokemon against each other. I'm not ranking Mamoswine directly against Pikachu necessarily. I'm ranking it against other defenders. And against other defenders, I think a lot of other defenders outclass it, even though Mamoswine is pretty good. It's just fallen off in recent memory. They could probably buff this Pokemon slightly if they wanted to compete with all these other defenders that are insanely good. Snorlax, for me, sits in the B+ tier as well. In competitive play, I don't know, in competitive play, you'd always draft Slowbro, Lapras, Umbreon, maybe even Tree. Snorlax is good. I just feel like its niche is not as valuable, especially outside of full-on competitive play. And I make my tier list for 99% of the players who play this game, not the 1% who are playing at the highest level. Sometimes I do make competitive tier lists, but this is a tier list based on what you are going to experience as most players inside the game, and I think Snorlax sitting right there is fine. It's a strong tank. B+ is a strong tier. Good place to put it. I'd probably put Goodra there as well. Goodra's weird. I really like Goodra, but Goodra is a different thing as well. It's not Greedent different, but the thing about Goodra is it's a tank that doesn't have a lot of stuns. It has Power Whip, it has Acid Spray, but it's not like these other tank Pokemon that feel like they're constantly disrupting the enemy team with tons of crowd control effects. And because of that, I think it's good. And especially if you get levels on it, it can really help in some of the end fights, but I just don't think it's that valuable. It's in a weird position, I guess. It doesn't feel like it can be your only defender sometimes, and I think that's pretty tough. Now we have Wigglytuff, who's essentially a tank, so I'll talk about it as well. We have Crustle. Here's the thing. Crustle is not a terrible Pokemon. It's not awful, but man, this Pokemon could really use some love. So I'm going to put it down into our C tier. You could even put it into our D tier right here. It's fine. You don't lose games because you're playing Crustle. You might lose games because of some of the strategies that you choose around this Pokemon, but as a defender, you can actually do some decent stuff with Crustle, and then sort of as a harasser, you can as well. I just think compared to all the other defenders, it feels like Crustle has gotten the least amount of love from the devs, and it probably could use some buffs. So that's why I'm putting it down in our C tier. And also compared to every other defender, I can't think of a defender I would say, oh no, swap it out for Crustle, even though I do love playing it. And now Wiggly, I'd probably put Wiggly B or B+. It's good. I think here, one of the biggest things about Wiggly is Wiggly's Unite move gives your team a team-wide shield. Umbreon's almost in every game that I play. I swear I see Umbreon every single game. And it's in the S tier, unbelievable tier. If you use your Wigglytuff Unite move and then it's immediately followed up by an enemy Umbreon Unite move, you just gave it all of your shields over to the enemy team. It's countered so hard by Umbreon, and Umbreon is so prevalent right now. So I think B tier is kind of a fair place to put this Pokemon. Let's move on to another role here inside of Pokemon Unite. Let's do our all-rounders. I think that could be pretty fun. All-rounders. There's some really good ones inside the game right now, and some ones that just received some buffs, so let's talk about it. Zarina, I think, is in one of the worst positions it's been in the game in a long time. Yes, you can carry with this Pokemon. I just think Zarina's rough, man. Every Zarina I see is doing really, really poorly inside the game. Again, high skill ceiling, so if you're very good with this Pokemon, you could still be doing some really solid damage, and you could still set up some great KOs, and you can use your Unite move to isolate, you know, an important enemy. In general, I think Serena is just in such a rough position in Unite. I really do. Scissor. Scissor is maybe B+. I think I've been putting it B+. I don't know. You could make some arguments that it's a little better than this. I think the big problem with Scissor is a problem that a lot of Pokemon are running into right now, which is just its utility is not as useful because it's running into special attackers instead of attackers. This would do better running into more attack-based Pokemon. If there was a way to see your enemy team's team comp, Scissor rises in value. But without being able to see their team comp, you just run into some things that this Pokemon really doesn't want to fight, and they're pretty common inside the meta right now. So I have to say that Scissor's maybe B+. Yeah, it's good. You can carry with it, but then into certain enemies, you're like, oof, this is really hard. Scyther feels maybe B. Scyther feels just kind of like a mid-level speedster right now. I'm not that impressed with it. I've seen people try to run it competitive. I'm not that impressed with it. Scyther is just, I don't know. The thing about speedsters are they're either, you know, everything or they're nothing. And at times, Scyther is everything, but I do think it just falls off too hard. And it just kind of, it gets countered pretty easily. If you don't get its Unite move in a great position where you can start wiping away enemy Pokemon, you're in trouble. If you're going into squishies only and it's squishy enemies, you can do well, but tanky enemies, it feels like it just, I don't know, it's fine. It's fine. B tier, I think, is fair. Char is B+. B+ or A. The thing about Char is it also runs into a lot of special attackers right now. I think I've been favoring this higher on my tier list recently, but I think one of the big problems with Char is just it is not tanky enough to deal with some of the burst damage inside the game, and I feel like for that reason it's kind of easily punishable. You could also pull it out of its Unite move in some weird ways, like Buzzwole can pull it out of its Unite move, which is just bizarre. So I think Char is pretty good. You need a lot of experience, and it did get some buffs a little while back, but it's not crushing it right now. I don't think it's A tier crushing it. I'm going to put Buzzwole up in the A+ tier, however. The buffs it got, amazing. I think it already was doing really well. I think the big problem with Buzzwole is extremely high skill ceiling, so you've got to be very good with this Pokemon. I guess high skill ceiling and low skill floor. So depending on how good you are with this, you could be horrible or you could be amazing. And I think Buzzwole is in a really great position right now to crush it. Crush it. The buffs were great for this Pokemon. I'd actually say Machamp for me outclasses Scissor and Charizard in some ways. I think Machamp is just always kind of slept on a bit. Dynamic Punch and either move really sets up a lot of amazing moments, and its Unite move is pretty good. I think Machamp is just not a very cool pick right now because they haven't done anything to it in a long time. But I do think it's a really solid pick, especially in a lot of solo environments. I think you can get a lot done with Machamp. Let's see. T-Tar. I'm not in love with T-Tar right now. I do not love T-Tar. I think it's pretty rough, honestly. I think it just gets kind of dominated when it's close to certain things and dominated far away. I think it's in a rough spot right now. They probably need to help out its earlier levels or something, because even once it gets its level 9, I haven't found it to be very impactful as of late, and it's a really experience hungry Pokemon with a very middling early and mid game. So yeah, I'm not in love with Tyranitar right now. Sword, I can't tell with Sword. I'm gonna cautiously put Aegislash up into our A tier. Here's the thing with Aegislash. Aegislash is a mechanical expert's dream. When you are playing well with this Pokemon, you are really crushing it. I think one of the big problems with Aegislash is it's kind of hard to do that well with. And I think with its recent buffs, Shadow Claw is much better. And I think given that its defenses are high, I think they're some of the highest defenses in the entire game when you're in shield form. I think Aegislash is actually looking a lot better than it has in a while. And it's always been a relatively high skill ceiling Pokemon. I could be overvaluing this, but I would say A tier is a pretty fair place for a Pokemon like Aegislash. Zacian, it's probably still S. Here's the thing. I think Zacian is noticeably weaker from playing it. I played it 3, maybe 4 matches since the nerf. I think it's noticeably weaker. To be fair, I don't play a ton of this Pokemon, and I'm not saying it's bad by saying it's noticeably weaker. I'm just saying it is not what it used to be, especially upon release. In fact, if this is about the level Zacian released at, I think people would be talking about how it's OP, but we would have not had this horrible multiple seasons of dealing with this Pokemon. Still very good, can still do some pretty crazy things. It just does not feel as overpowered as it used to. And spoiler, it's not in our God tier for that reason. It's I don't think it is the same Pokemon that it used to be. Urshifu, however, is really good. I have a hard time placing our Urshifus because both of them are so good. Like, you could easily put both of them here in this S tier. You easily could. They're insane. Single strike secure, amazing. It still brawls really well too. Its Unite move is crazy. It cancels Slowbro's Unite, which I had no idea. And then you've got Water Bear, which has probably the best level 5 inside of Pokemon Unite, and it's insane. I don't feel like the nerfs seem to change much at all with this Pokemon. If you had to, I don't even want to separate the two. I don't really see the point. They're both crazy good. I'm just going to leave them where they are. I think Urshifu, both versions of it, are so good. If you don't like Single Strike, you are crazy. If you don't like Rapid Strike, you're insane. And if you don't like either, what are you doing here, you silly goose? You're nuts. Go to the loony bin. I don't know. We don't have those anymore. But the point is, I think this Pokemon is doing so well inside the game, no matter how you play it. Urshifu is still a menace. In some ways, I think Urshifu is probably better than Zacian, but hot take. But I think it might be better than Zacian. So, okay. Next Pokemon, Lucario. Lucario is a weird one. I can't put it lower than B+, but there's no question that Lucario has fallen on hard times compared to what Lucario used to be. I still think there's some good stuff that this Pokemon does inside the game, but it really does feel like they're just newer Pokemon that kind of do all of Lucario's things, but better. So for that reason, I think B+ is a fair place to put this Pokemon. Azumarill. Okay, now here is where my bias is going to shine through. I love this new Azumarill change, and I know it's slight, but number changes can be massive if the threshold that you reach with a new number means that you get KOs you wouldn't have otherwise got. So with Azumarill, and I'm not sure where I want to put it yet. I'm thinking A tier, maybe B+. Here's the thing with Azumarill. It has a lot going for it. It evolves at 4. It stacks well in lane. Its single target damage is amazing. There are actually a few Pokemon that counter it pretty well. Like Scizor, I think, is a pretty good counter for Azumarill. But in general, it also does well into a lot of the EVs. You dive pretty well into the enemy backline. Your burst damage is so high that it's kind of easy to delete something before it has the ability to, react and heal itself. I actually think Azumarill might be doing better than this B+ tier. For me, it's definitely in the A tier for my personal preference. It's hard to say it's kind of better than this group right here, so I'm going to leave it B+ for the time being. This is a good moment that I would love to hear from you all in the comments. What do you think about Azumarill right now inside the game? And by the way, of course, whenever I put a Pokemon up, feel free to let me know what you think. As always, be cool to each other, but I'm more than willing to hear what everybody has to say about my placement on some of these Pokemon. Again, these are close. I mean, shades here, right? It's A to B+. These are very, very close. You could put all these Pokemon on the same tier if you wanted to. But I do think Azumarill probably has more value right now than people are going to give it credit for a while. Dragonite is such a weird one. Without question, it rocketed up. I don't know if it's A or if it's B+. Outrage is so much better, and Hyper Beam is really good right now. The thing about it, because it can secure with Hyper Beam, and because Outrage is so much better, I might put it A, and that's pretty crazy. Honestly, it's pretty crazy. But I think a competent player on this Pokemon right now is pretty good. Here's the only issue. I think Dragonite is not good into a lot of Pokemon out there. It's not really good into Umbreon. It's not good into Lapras. It's not great into Buzzwole. Not great into Scizor. Because of some of the matchups you see, I could easily see putting it down here into the B+ tier. However, it does have that secure. And being able to secure an objective is one of the most important things in the game. I might leave it B+. Both of these, I think, are doing really well right now, but In fact, a lot of the stuff in the B+ tier, these are all good Pokemon. Okay. Garchomp. Garchomp I think is doing better than most. I mean, I think it's really good. Dragon Claw combo is insane. It really is. Earthquake Dig, not so much, but Dragon Claw's combo, the ability to catch enemy Pokemon with this Dragon Claw, multiple enemy Pokemon with it, then right into a Unite move, or just right into ripping them apart. Garchomp is actually doing well. It's been doing well in the game for a little while now, and I think, yeah, I think A tier is a super fair place for it. That looks like all of our all-rounders. Let's move on to let's do supporters. Sure. We'll move on to our supporters here in Unite, a category that I think is extremely strong. These supporters are really, really good. All of them have a lot of value, so let's move through them. We already did Wigglytuff, because Wigglytuff, while not being a defender, is essentially a defender. And let's move to, you know what, let's move to Pokemon that got nerfed, but I think is still probably fine, and that's Sableye. Haven't played a ton of Sableye since the nerfs. However, I don't think even losing that much HP, I think it makes you have to be a little more deliberate with some of the things you do. But I don't think you've gotten rid of still the incredible value this Pokemon provides as its role, you know, as an assasser. Assasser? Harasser. The assasser harasser. Sableye. I need to take a little drink of water here. Okay, here we go. Harasser. Sableye is a harasser. I think as a harasser, this Pokemon is still very good, even though you do need to be more deliberate with it. Blissey, A+ for me. I think Blissey's insanely good. Not broken. At one point in the game, I think it was broken, but still an incredibly good Pokemon that I think it's hard to not enjoy having a Blissey on your team. Its Unite's amazing. Its Healing's amazing. Its Shield's awesome. Eldegoss might be S. I actually think I might put Eldegoss into the S tier. For the first time in a long time, it's really good. It's really good competitively. It's really good solo. It's such a strong choice right now. I really think Eldegoss is such a strong choice inside the game right now. I'm curious. Let me take a look at the meta here. I'm just curious what Eldegoss's win rate's looking like, because I think its win rate always feels good too. Yeah, it's one of the highest in the game. I'm keeping it S. I really do think Eldegoss is great, and it's easy to use. It's a great Pokemon for newer players. I love Eldegoss. I feel like there are a few builds you can go on and all provide a ton of value. Hoopa, for me, hangs out in the same category. I think Hoopa's insane. It's a little less valuable solo, obviously, than it is in coordinated play, but the plays that you can make with this Pokemon, no one else can do what Hoopa can do, and it's so incredibly valuable. I think Hoopa is a top-tier Pokemon. It is uniquely amazing, and I think Hoopa deserves to be up here in this S tier. Clefable, I think, is great. I think A+. It's awesome. Follow Me, Moonlight, I think is the most winning build for this Pokemon. The heals are incredible. It's team-wide. You walk out with 100,000+ every single match. Its Unite move provides some really great options for your team as well. Supports are doing so good in the game. Comfey. Comfey might be A. It might have dropped down to the A tier, but honestly, that could not be right. It's very possible that this Pokemon is still insanely broken, and you just need to throw it on the right ally. I'm gonna keep it A. I think the nerfs have at least hurt it so much that you don't see it the way you used to see it. So I'm gonna put it into the A tier. Still a very good choice, but you need a good ally to put that Comfey collar on for sure. And then we have Mime, who I think the best placing I could put Mime is B+. I think B+ maybe is the best place I could put Mime. I think it is probably a little better than Wiggly. It's different though. It's a stun tank role. In solo, also duo trio play, it definitely outshines some other choices that would beat it in coordinated play, right? In 5-stack play, I think there's really only one team that even still tries to run Mime in 5-stacks play, and that's Nouns, and that's because Bruv is one of the best Mime players in the world. Still a decent Pokemon. It's fallen really far from the heights it was at, and I think for that reason people think it's bad. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's fallen really far, and that's why it feels bad. Okay, we're gonna do our speedsters last, so we're gonna move on to our attackers right now. We've got a lot of good attackers inside Pokemon Unite. Competitively, you're not going to see really any of the AD carries show up very often, but we're going to talk about them right now. Let's put them on the board. I'll just throw them in the Decidueye Memorial tier for now, but that's not where they're going to stay. We've got Cinder, we've got Greninja, Dragapult, Decidueye kind of is in this conversation, Duraludon, and that's essentially it. These are our ranged attack damage carry Pokemon. So, okay, what's going on with a lot of these Pokemon? First of all, special attack is crazy. I think once cursed items hit the game, we could see these Pokemon really rise in value. I have a video about cursed items on my channel if you want to look into that. They basically will lower the amount of healing an opponent is able to get just by using their auto attacks, which could be crazy, crazy good. For now, however, they're still solid to varying degrees of being solid. I think I'm kind of ranking them once again against each other. I think Decidueye is probably A, probably right there with Duraludon. Duraludon might be A+. It's one of those Pokemon that never seems to lose, even though no one plays it. It's still one of the highest win rate Pokemon in the game. I'm going to put it in A+. I just think people just don't play this Pokemon. But if you play Duraludon, you just recognize how insanely good this thing is. Decidueye, amazing. Easily punishable, but amazing with Spirit Shackle. Cinderace, I think B+ is probably a fair place. Dragapult always has a higher win rate than Cinderace and Greninja for whatever reason. And then you have Greninja, who's probably right in line there with Cinder. Possibly Greninja is one tier lower. All of these Pokemon are carry Pokemon, meaning they can get big KOs. If they get a lot of experience, it's easy for them to carry their team to victory in some big fights. All of them do pretty well. If I had to put one in the B tier, it would probably be Greninja, but a great Greninja player is great. Oftentimes that one just is not on your team for whatever reason. I think the AD carries competitively suffer, but I think in all other forms of play, they still have a decent amount of value. So that's the array that I'm going to put them at right now. Duraludon having the most value just because it doesn't lose. Like, I'm sorry, but at some point we just have to recognize that this Pokemon does not lose many games compared to others. It's just so good. Let's move on to our special attackers right here. A lot of great special attackers. I'm going to put... I wonder what's going on with Glaceon. I wonder how bad people felt like Glaceon's been hurt since the nerfs here. The win rate's still extremely solid for this Pokemon. I think it's hard to say that Glaceon's anything lower than A+. It might still be S, but I feel like with the multiple nerfs this Pokemon has received, I'm going to put it in the A+ tier and pray that that is a good place for it. To be fair, it still could be an S tier choice. This is another one I would love to hear from you in the chat. The more, in the comments, the more Glaceon I see played, I don't see it have the same impact as it did when it was completely busted. It's still really good. It just doesn't feel the same, but that's, you know, that just could be my point of view right there. I'm going to put it down into our A+ tier. Espeon, I still think is really good. A tier feels like a solid place. A tier! Sorry, I forgot I was going through puberty as I started recording this. Frustrating, but I'm excited to see what happens. I mean, imagine if I have a mustache like this, what happens when I go through puberty? So I think Espeon is a solid A tier Pokemon. I think Stored Power is good. I think Psyshock is good. All really solid choices. Very, very solid. I'm going to put Ninetales in our A+ tier. I think Ninetales is crazy good. It doesn't feel broken necessarily, but it feels like an amazing special attacker with Blizzard, Avalanche. I love it, love it, love it. I just think it's so great and so dominant in lane. Gardevoir, I think, is A tier. Very solid. Probably the least shiny of our mages right now. Maybe right in line with Delphox. I'll throw Delphox into the A tier as well. Maybe A+. I think Delphox, because of its mobility, I probably have to put it up into the A+ tier here. I'm not sure. It might hang right next to Gardevoir. Delphox definitely feels like it's taken some hits as of late. It doesn't feel as good as it used to be, but it's still a really solid choice. A lot of the mages are good because of Slick Spoon. I mean, we're in a Slick Spoon world, everybody. Chandelure, I'm going to put in our A+ tier. I think the Overheat moveset for Chandelure is incredible, and both of its other moves I think are really good for different reasons. So, Chandelure, also seeing competitive play too. You see a lot of teams picking this Pokemon up right now. Really, really solid. Mew is hard to say that Mew is not at least A+. You might even be able to say Mew is still S. The things it can do, no one else can do. But it does feel like it's lost a lot of its viability since some of its nerfs. Now, that being said, a top tier Mew is still one of the best in the game. They really are. I mean, they're just incredible. But I do feel like A+ is a very fair place to put this Pokemon. Sylveon, A, really solid. Everything it does is good. It doesn't feel like it's broken at all, but it feels really, really good. I like Sylveon a lot. Pikachu, probably B tier. It probably needs a little love. I love playing Pikachu. You can still get great value out of it. It's more of a support attacker inside the game. I think it needs a little something to compete with the other special attackers, and that's why I'm putting it here in the B tier. Cramorant, A+. Cram's insane. Dive Cram is just nuts. Still nuts in this meta. Been nuts before. Will probably be nuts again unless they nerf it, and its Unite move's really good right now. Venusaur is a weird one. I normally keep Venusaur about like B+ or whatever. It might be A. It might be even better. Here's the thing about Venu. Venu's been getting a lot of play with the Solar Beam build competitively, and that build is actually doing really well. I think Slick Spoon is a huge reason for that. You're just getting so much more damage out of this build than you did before. Comboing that with the Unite move is huge. And then you also have Giga Drain Petal Dance, which is a really great build for this attacker to brawl with because of how they reset against each other and the damage reduction that you get from using Giga Drain. I just think Venusaur is actually doing better than it has in a while, and I think A is a fair place for this Pokemon. Let's move on to our speedsters. Finally, we're gonna talk about Leafeon here in a minute. Zeraora is the worst. Zeraora is a carry. You can do well with it, just like Zarina. But let's face it, this Pokemon has been forgotten. They changed this Pokemon a little bit. It's meta in an instant. I'm telling you, boom, meta in an instant if they change this Pokemon. But right now, it's not doing too well. Absol, also not doing too well. It feels like it sits as one of the lowest win rate Pokemon all the time. It's pretty low right now that I'm looking at it. It's right down there with, Pokemon like Zarina and stuff like that. I am going to say Absol is maybe B. B is fine. I think it's underrated a little bit, but it just doesn't seem to win games. Gengar is kind of the same way. You can carry with it, but why would you? I don't know. I'm not in love with any of these three speedsters. I think they all need something. But again, always on a razor's edge, or a razor's claw, if you will, because they could be very good at any moment. Dodrio, I would say A+, really good, but countered by so much. One of the perfect speedsters in my mind is Dodrio. It's insanely good, but it's very, very counterable. Every Pokemon has a way to counter this thing. However, Dodrio still does pretty well. I think it's great. I think if I'd have to put a speedster up in the S tier, it would probably be Zoroark. I think Zoroark is kind of the most brusted one in the game. And brusted is just another way of saying busted and broken at the same time. I do think it's pretty brusted. If I was pressed, I could see it down here in the A+. The thing is, I don't think Zoroark does anything that means you have to win games once you pick it, and you have to be extremely skilled to do well with this Pokemon. However, if you are extremely skilled, I do think it's pretty brusted. Talonflame has been getting more and more value recently inside a lot of competitive play and in some solo play, and I think the big thing is people are leveraging its ability to not be in combat for a moment and dive in on squishy attacker type Pokemon. For that reason, I'm going to put it in the B+ tier. That might be a little high, but I want to sort of rank these against each other a little bit. I still think Talon could use some love. I don't think it competes with Dodrio and Zoroark, really. And now finally on to our last Pokemon here, Leafeon, the most recent addition inside of Pokemon Unite. I think Leafeon is a really exciting speedster. It does some things that are absolutely broken without question, but also it performs like a speedster should. As the match goes on, it loses some value, it's squishy, it's punishable. I really like this release. I think I maybe am putting it too low, to be fair, but I'm I'm going to put this Pokemon in our A tier. That is where I'm going to leave Leafeon. So an A tier Pokemon, I think, is about where I'd put it. And the reason I'm putting it A instead of A+, which it might be, or B+, is because it's really, really powerful. It gets an amazing move at 4, whichever way you go with it. Its damage is extremely good. Its Unite move is on a crazy low cooldown, but it is punishable. It is really squishy. It's easy to catch this Pokemon and shut it down. It feels like one of the truest speedsters that they've ever put into Pokemon Unite. And now it's time to put our God tier Pokemon on the list. I don't think you're going to be surprised by this. I sure am not. It's Umbreon. Umbreon's insane. I put Umbreon on the Umbreon tier list, I think in the A tier. And a lot of it was because I was playing Mean Look and Wish and stuff like that more than I was playing Snarl and Foul Play. Snarl, Foul Play, Umbreon right now is insane. It's completely busted inside the game. It's the craziest thing you have to deal with inside of Pokemon Unite. I truly think it is our God tier Pokemon without question right now. Let me know what you think in the comments. And now, this. And that's why it really is Chandelure. Chandelure is the God tier Pokemon. Nothing else can stop someone from using a move, but Chandelure can do that with Imprison. It's a broken ability, and given that it's so broken, there really is nothing you can do about this Pokemon. So I think it has to be Chandelure. And of course, we see Pokemon like, Ninetales is just falling off a cliff once everyone figured out that Blizzard Avalanche is terrible. Scissor's awful. Comfey's useless now. Hoopa is basically completely useless because of how good Zeraora is. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this tier list. I love you, and I'll see y'all next time.